right. Welcome everybody to the Environmental Advisory Board meeting. My name is Heather Sandine and we'll pass it off to Brooke Brockett and let you call the meeting to order before I do the.
So with that, I will call our meeting to order, saying that we have a quorum. And Heather, if you could take it away with our meeting procedures.
All right, so again, my name is Heather Sandine and I'm serving as the technical host for tonight's meeting. Thank you for your grace and patience as we deal with clunky technology at times. Here we go. The city has engaged with community members to co-create a vision for productive, meaningful, and inclusive civic conversations. This vision supports physical and emotional safety for community members, staff, and board and commission members, as well as democracy for people of all ages, identities, lived experiences, and political perspectives. For more information about this vision and the community engagement process, please visit that website, bouldercolorado.gov/services/productive-atmospheres. The following are examples of rules of decorum found in the Boulder Revised Code and other guidelines that support this vision. These will be upheld during this meeting. All remarks and testimony shall be limited to matters related to city business. No participant shall make threats or use other forms of intimidation against any person. Obscenity, racial epithets, and other speech and behavior that disrupts or otherwise impedes the ability to conduct the meeting are prohibited. Participants are required to sign up to speak using the name they are commonly known by, and individuals must display their whole name before being allowed to speak online. Currently, only audio testimony is permitted online. Because we do not have registration for open and public comment tonight, you can indicate you would like to participate by using the raise hand function. The raise hand button is in the participant box, which can be found in the menu by hovering over the top or the bottom of your screen and then clicking on the participant icon. When the box opens, you will see the raise hand button at the bottom. By clicking that button, you can indicate you would like to participate in open or public comment. If you have joined us by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand.
All right, thank you so much. Any raised hands?
Sorry, I'm having trouble seeing the bottom today.
No worries.
Do a little bit of shifting over here. We do not have any raised hands.
Seeing none, I will move on. So, and let's do the approval of minutes before we jump into. So I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting last month.
Second.
Great, thank you. Quick raise of hand vote, all in favor? That is unanimous. All right, moving on. If you want to take it away, Carl, or Jonathan, are we? Who's leading on this one?
I will kick it off, Chair Brockett. So for the record, Jonathan Cohen, Director of Climate Initiatives. Good to see you all, board members. So your main discussion item tonight is on the city's policy agenda. You all remember Carl, he's been here before. And the last time we had a conversation, Carl was really talking about how he and the city really develops its policy agenda and prepares that for council to adopt and move forward, and how that policy agenda really guides a lot of the work of city staff. And so really delighted that Carl can come back and share with you the updated policy agenda. And I thought it would be particularly relevant for the board for Carl to go through some of the policy agenda items related to climate sustainability and the things that you all care so deeply about. So with that, Carl, anything else you want me to?
No.
You want me to talk about you? I can gush about Carl.
No, well, say my name for the record as well. Carl Castillo, Chief Policy Advisor, City Manager's Office. And thank you all for being here today. Good to see you all again. Yeah, just for benefit of those who may be listening in, real quickly, the policy statement, which I do have extra copies of, that was approved last year for this year, is this document right here. It is used to allow us to advocate for changes in law throughout the region, throughout the state, throughout the federal government. We do have lobbyists that we hire at the state and federal government. And we do engage in both the regulatory as well as the legislative process. So that could be something like a staff member drafting a bill, like I'll talk about. Yeah, happy. In fact, if anyone else would like a copy. Thank you. Or it could be our mayor. It could be working with a coalition like our CC4CA Climate Coalition. So in terms of this year's revisions, we just met with our Council Intergovernmental Affairs Committee on Monday. We met with them a month before as well. So the next steps before this is approved is it goes to the full council on October 24th for input at a study session. And then it'll go for ultimate approval on consent. Hopefully, that's what it's been in the past on November 7th. And then we hope to present it to our legislators at a breakfast that we have. It's an annual legislative breakfast on December 3rd. And Andy, I'll mention that if you look at that document, there's 3 big groupings that are of interest to this group probably. It's the climate and resilience. It is the regional environmental quality, and then there's one on transportation. You can correct me, but there may be, those are the ones that came to mind as like the natural ones that fit into your scope of interest. So in terms of anticipated legislation, I will mention that there's a bill that we're working with Representative Junie Joseph on that would create an on-bill repayment program for accessible energy upgrades. That's the tentative title. You probably have all heard about this kind of program in one shape or another. It's the idea that as a ratepayer, you occasionally want to make some enhancements and improvements to your appliances, but oftentimes, even though it's going to save you money, the upfront costs, it can be significant, and having that financed by the utility and allowing you to pay it back over time can be really helpful and open up the opportunities for a lot of people and move us as a state to our greenhouse gas goals quicker. So this particular bill would essentially require our investor-owned utilities to offer such a on-bill financing program. And it would attach to the meter. So if you were to borrow $50,000 or whatever, $5,000 the case may be, and you decide to move out a year later, the obligation continues with the meter. So whoever moves in would then assume that liability. So it's different than a property tax lien. Officially, it's treated differently, but that's the functional difference. It frees you to be able to move and make sure that the beneficiary of this appliance or this improvement continues to pay for it. So we're working with a variety of stakeholders on this. We just got Boulder County as our main one, but we just got the approval of the Larimer County Commissioners yesterday, so we were thrilled to hear about that. CC4CA, Colorado Communities for Climate Action, just supported it as well. And we're very hopeful that we will get the support of the Western Resource Advocates and SWEEP, Southwest Energy Efficiency Program. And we are working closely with 2 of the state entities that are going to be essential to both implement this as well as just to get their support politically. And that's the Colorado Energy Office and the Public Utilities Commission. So that's an important one that we're working on. Then there is a clean energy planning bill. So you likely remember that I think it's over the last 2 years, there's been an attempt to establish a clean, a 100% fossil fuel free requirement for energy utilities by 2040. Hasn't gone forward, partly because the way it's been introduced, it has included some elements that the environmental community hasn't supported. So it basically hasn't had enough enforcement or enough of a hammer to ensure that the utilities follow through. We believe this is the year it's going to go forward. We know the governor is very motivated to pass that because it is, in fact, one of the things he campaigned on was 100% by 2040. And, you know, he still has a couple more years, but I'm pretty sure he wants to get this done now. So the version that we're hearing about would include sequestration. I think there's some controversy about that. Another group of bills that we're hearing about, it's a little amorphous, but it's basically providing local government authority to do a few things. One of them would be to create a fee-based program. This is something that's in our policy statement, has been there for years. It essentially would allow us to charge a fee for the purchase and registration one time, after the initial purchase of an inefficient vehicle, and to provide a rebate for an efficient vehicle. Obviously, it's going to encourage one, discourage the other. It has components that, well, first of all, it's just the concept of this idea, but the concept would recognize the equity concerns by making sure that it would not apply to the vehicles that lower income people would tend to buy. So for example, it might say, if you buy an inefficient vehicle that's over $50,000, then we're going to ding you with this fee. And regardless of what your income is, you'd get a rebate. So that's an idea that has been presented to us that I think we would easily support. I don't know how much we'd get it, whether we'd be. I think the Energy Office, which has actually suggested this, would perhaps like to see us lead on this, these cities in general. So I'm not sure if we're there yet, but definitely something that we can support because that's all the local option. Another idea, more in the climate resilience realm, is wildfire mitigation measures. So increasingly, we are moving to a place where the city and all cities and counties will have standards. Here's the mitigation measures we expect you to take at your property, the landscaping immediately around it. And this bill would require disclosure of the steps that you've taken upon the sale of your home. So the person purchasing it would be aware of those mitigation measures. It also, again, it's a concept, could require you to disclose measures that you haven't taken that were actually either required by an ordinance or maybe by an assessment. So one is more of a carrot, the other one's more of a stick. But I think that too is an interesting idea that I know our council in our governmental affairs committee thought could be an interesting way to make sure that we move the needle on making sure people are making the improvements they need to make not just themselves safer, but of course their entire neighborhood. And then the last one is creation of an air emission standards for appliances. So this is an interesting concept. So the whole, as you know, frankly, I don't even know exactly how it's written out, but I believe the city has a goal for appliances must be carbon free for new homes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
This was all part of the energy code that goes into effect December 1st.
And there is a concern that we may not get sued on this, but Denver certainly either has, I think they already have. And the argument would be that they have been preempted by federal law to engage in any ordinances that dictate what the efficiency of appliances are. The federal government says, here's the efficiencies that appliances must be, and state and local government, you can't go any further. So there's a chance that Denver raises that case. And if so, we would get caught up in that in terms of the implication of it. The law would be binding on us and we would have to repeal that part of our law. So one thing that the Energy Office is thinking about, again, looking to work with local governments on, is saying, okay, well, we can't regulate efficiency, but we can regulate emissions. So if you have X or Y parameters coming from the appliance, then you can prohibit it. Sounds a little too cute, perhaps, but there is reason to believe that by other states and other cities that have adopted this approach that have not been sued, that this is not in conflict with the federal law that has to do with federal appliance efficiency standards. So it could be an interesting approach. And so it would allow a city like Boulder to say, well, fine, we're not going to look at the efficiency. We're just going to look at the air emissions that come from the appliance. And with that, we can make sure that we have the same result, which is moving towards electrification.
Would it be possible to also offer incentives towards, if that doesn't work, offer incentives towards emission-free appliances? I know that the budget or in the legislature and local levels is
Yeah,
touchy at best, but is that another possible pathway worth exploring?
absolutely. And I know there are some incentives now, and then creating an awareness of it, making sure people are trained that are coming to our homes and offering us options is a big part of it as well.
Can I
Yeah,
add one thing?
please.
Sorry. It's a really good question. The reason that we wanted to address this in the construction phase is that we're investing in that gas infrastructure in new development. And so we're trying to get ahead of that so we don't end up stranding that investment. And then it makes it that much harder to do the conversion later. So with the existing homes and the way we're thinking about it with the building code, absolutely, we're trying to develop the right incentive package to make those conversions, but at the same time, we wield that really powerful tool of code with new development and new construction.
That makes sense.
So anyway, an interesting opportunity. On the transportation front, there is a bill that will be introduced because it's been referred by the Transportation Legislative Review Committee. It's one of these committees that meets during the off session by the General Assembly. It's composed by some members, and they passed what would be a requirement for CDOT to create mode share targets. So how much of the transportation and the infrastructure that has been put in place is for single occupancy vehicles, how much of it is for transit, how much of it is for bike, and something that I didn't know that that was something we didn't have, or that was something that can be created, but apparently this bill would set those standards and then require CDOT to work with, in the case of our Front Range, Dr. Cog, the Regional Council of Governments, RTD, and cities and counties to make sure that those mode share targets are actually implemented. So that's an interesting idea. There's also an ongoing discussion by some legislators on RTD governance reform, which is really important. As you know, we did get a lot of new money for RTD, or I should say for statewide transit last year, both in the form of funding for Front Range passenger rail, extension of the train that goes to Winter Park, and also some other strategic corridors, as well as just a lot of money for RTD. But there is immediately conversation about how that still is not enough for what we really need, especially now that we've had these land use measures passed that rely on the assumption that there are transit-oriented corridors, that people can live more, densely and don't need as much parking because there's a lot of transit. So we can't have transit-oriented development without good effective transit. So part of getting there is making sure that people can vote for something that would give money to RTD, which means building trust, especially for a region that has not been, that has not had much reason to trust because of the lack of deliverance of Northwest Rail that was promised us for a while ago. So part of these conversations are, okay, what are the reforms to the governance system that we have to make at RTD to build that trust, to make it more effective? What kind of transparency measures, what kind of partnerships, maybe what kind of changes in what the scope of responsibilities are for RTD versus what counties and cities should do and what money they should get. So kind of re-envisioning how RTD, with the gigantic footprint that it has and the gigantic responsibility, how it can function better. And last year, it also included board governance reform, basically saying they shouldn't be appointed, they shouldn't be elected, they should be appointed, let's have more expertise, let's have a smaller board, let's have them pay, that way we'll have more professionalization of the elected officials. But that did not go over well at all, because as you would expect, most people would say, wait a minute, you want to take my elected office and you want to have that appointed by the governor? That's kind of sounds like disenfranchisement. I didn't say that word correctly, but you know what I mean. It's basically disenfranchising people who have become used to electing as board members. So I don't think they're going to go there. They may or may not, but there's a lot of RTD reform that's being considered, which I think ultimately is an environmental concern and benefit if we do get that, build that trust, build that functionality, and build funding mechanisms. There's also a bill that will be introduced that would provide authority for local governments to impose a vulnerable road user fee. So this is the concept that heavier, bigger vehicles are more likely to hurt you. Basic physics, higher grills, heavier vehicles, you're not gonna slow down as quickly. And so the state tried to do this last year, but the governor says, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to impose these taxes statewide. So this year, we're trying to do it on a local level. Give local governments the authority. For example, City of Boulder might say, we want to impose these fees, not to like punish anybody who has a big vehicle, but to use these revenues to fund infrastructure improvements and traffic safety and just basically Vision Zero safety programs. And so with this bill, if it was to pass, we would be able to then go to the county and say, as the Department of Motor Vehicle, can you make sure that you implement this fee? And just like we did with their ranked choice voting, where they actually operate our elections, they also would be operating the collection of the revenue in this case. So
How much do you anticipate that to be per car per year?
so if it could go as much as up to $100 if it's a truck. I think it's as much as like $40 if it's a vehicle, and it's staggered by tiers. So right now, the way this bill is drafted is it's basically depending on the weight of the vehicle, and you have like a bunch of different tiers. And it basically says local governments, you could charge as much as, but not any more than these. So cities could always go lower than that. It also says that because electric vehicles weigh more, local governments may decide to waive that fee in the case of an electric vehicle, because even though it's maybe not just as unsafe, it is something we want to encourage, of course. So it basically lets local governments decide that. I think that might be it for. Yeah, that's it for the actual bills that I expect. In terms of changes that are being proposed to the policy statement for 2025 that will be taken to council, we have a position under climate resilience, position B, which has to do with wild safety operations and ensuring utility investments that reduce wildfire risks and prioritize service reliability. And of course, there we mentioned our concern with making sure that public safety power shutoffs are communicated and are done so in a collaborative manner with local governments. We have a position E that's kind of a revision to what used to be about urban canopies, but we were looking at urban canopies as, well, it serves a lot of values. It sequesters carbon dioxide, it provides cooling, it provides jobs. But I would say, yeah, the amount of carbon dioxide it sequesters is very minimal. In terms of the true biggest argument is the heat mitigation, extreme heat mitigation. So we look at this position and structure it to say there's ecological ways to address extreme heat mitigation, like urban canopies, and then there's built environment approaches like urban cooling centers, communications about the risk factors, and Councilmember Folkerts just brought up yesterday, which we're adding the inclusion of green building and zoning codes that require heat reducing strategies such as cool floors and walls and cool permeable pavement. So this position is basically saying, state, help us out to achieve these goals. I don't know whether council's goal is to say cities every city should do this, but that's not yet where we're at. At this point, we're just saying state help support these efforts. And lastly, on the climate resilience front, at Councilmember Adams' request, we did add a position in support of climate literacy, which of course is hugely important. And there's a lot out there already. There was a bill last year that created a certification for climate literacy at the state level. But there's obviously a need for a lot more and a lot more integration and more bringing it into so many more environments and consistency and uniformity. So I think it's an important one to add there. In terms of restoring clean air, position 51, we're adding a position to encourage more investment in understanding the long-term impact of sustained exposure to air pollution on public health, particularly vulnerable populations. certainly something I'm worried about whenever we've had extreme, smog or smoke and fires is like, what exactly are we subjecting ourselves to? And how do we take that information and make appropriate decisions?
So when you're saying investing in that, are you talking financially or a knowledge base growth investment or?
Well, invest with money to get knowledge. Yeah, so that we know, so we have whatever federal agency would be that would be tasked to do that is, on days of this level of ozone, these particulate matters are this high, this is the kind of risk that you can impose on yourself. I mean, this came from Councilmember Spear, so I don't know what the current level of knowledge that has been shared by the federal government on this, but I think it's fair to say that we probably could use more information. I know, for example, we just went out, myself and my wife bought a air filter, kind of an expensive one, indoor, and it was motivated by these really smoky days that we occasionally have gotten. It's with more information, we can make that calculation, whether that makes sense. Is there going to be more medical bills otherwise? So seems like a reasonable investment. In terms of furthering city's Vision Zero action plan, position 68, we're adding support for measures to increase penalties for traffic violations that result in death or serious injury to vulnerable road users. We're indicating support for that vulnerable road user protection fee for a local option to adopt it. This is interesting. Requiring all new motor vehicles sold in Colorado to be equipped with passive intelligent speed assistance technology, requiring installation of active ISA technology for repeat speeding offenders. So this is basically, and it's been tried elsewhere. In fact, Gavin Newsom just vetoed it in California, where your car has technology that will basically let you know whether you're speeding. And I don't know how it works with your phone or car or what, but somehow it'd be a requirement that you register your car in this state or yeah, I think that's basically what it is. Then you would basically be getting notice so that potentially you could save a life. And then the active would be if you're a speeding offender, it would really slow you down. So,
I have a question about that.
yeah.
As probably, I assume many drivers know, commuting time, speed limits are wildly different than actual speed on the road. And at some point, if you go the speed limit, you become a danger on the road. How does that get accounted for with the protecting and saving lives because you're going the speed limit? What is it is, I'm sure not related to
it's probably one of the many very, very important questions, right? I mean, I mentioned it almost provocatively because it was brought up by our transportation department, who's charged with making safer roads, knowing that this is going to be a long haul effort. But I think that's just one of the practical challenges that we'll have to work out. You're right. I mean, we've all been there where the right thing to do is to go is the speed because you're going to create, a backup or worse. So
The technology is not there for it either right now. Like
um,
reliable, safe technology is not there to implement that. So
yeah.
that's-
I mean, all I know is that California just passed it and then the governor vetoed it. So whether they were going to pass it and then wait for the industry to develop the technology, I'm not sure.
Was it part of that AI bill that he vetoed, or was it a separate bill that he vetoed?
It was a bill that was specifically on this topic. Yeah. And it was the passive intelligence speed assistance, so the kind that would just nudge you, basically let you know. FYI. You're not limited, huh? And then this one, I think, is probably a little bit more, this is my last one too. Establishing a national motor vehicle testing and performance requirements that minimize the risk of pedestrian and bicycle deaths and injury, particularly attributed to the weight, design, and height of large SUVs. So my understanding is, as you know, there's long been a certification of how safe the car is for you as a passenger. So if you're driving a Humvee, you're gonna 100%, you're good. But if you're looking at, what your impact is on people outside, we don't really do those kind of ratings. Nor have we had a national effort to try to encourage those vehicles that could be safer for the vulnerable road users. which could actually work really well in tandem with local authority to charge a vulnerable road user fee. So rather than wait, it could be certification, where you rank on safe or unsafe vehicles. All right, I think I've taken up enough time. I'll conclude with that. And if there's any questions, I'd love to hear your feedback as well.
I guess I'm just curious, in your opinion, do you have a sense of which are most likely to be successful or to watch progress? Maybe not the fastest, but actually make legitimate progress as opposed to those who are just gonna get kicked aside pretty quickly.
Yeah, well, these are all like in the like moderate level of confidence that they will pass. But the problem with the vulnerable road user fee, even the local government option, is the governor still opposed to it. On the other hand, it's been passed by the Transportation Legislative Review Committee, which is significant. And there's even a chance that the Democrats get a supermajority in both the Senate and the House, in which case they could override our governor veto. So some unknowns. I would say the 100% by 2040 has a good chance. I would say that I think the fee-based program has a good chance.
So 5% of electricity generated in Colorado by 2040.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I know that Governor Bolts is going to be pushing hard on that one behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Because he's been trying to get that done for a while.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any environmentalist that would oppose him on that ultimate goal. It's what's included and how it's done.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a whole new legislature that we're dealing with for all of these things. So do you foresee any major problems with that, or do you think it's gonna continue to be fairly smooth sailing?
I'd actually just have to speak to our lobbyists, get a better sense of, the personalities and in some ways, I think some people who have term limited or stepped down have been some of the more have led to some of the more divisive atmosphere that we've had. So we could see some more cooperation. Yeah, and it won't be an election year, which is always helpful.
That doesn't, yeah, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Carl, can you share the summary notes that you have so we can know where to look in this big document?
So basically what I just read myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can share that.
Go ahead.
Just trying to follow the rules. Thank you.
Yeah.
And maybe this question for Carl, if the board members have questions, it was helpful for you to walk through the anticipated bills, but of course, we know that that's not all the bills that are being introduced.
Yeah.
I think they were, 300 and,
There was like 700.
oh, sorry, yeah,
Yeah.
700 or something like that.
300?
Yeah, I know what I was thinking.
Kind of.
They were more related to our work. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
That might be it.
Yeah, and I will say that Anita Stites from CC4CA did give me a list with about 25 bills. So these are the ones that I thought were more likely or were of more interest to our group.
But just connecting that a little bit to the policy agenda that Carl talked about at the beginning of his remarks. Again, just as a reminder, it's that document that helps give that kind of architecture for when we take positions on particular bills. And just really want to commend Carl because he does such a fantastic job coordinating across the city when a bill is introduced, knowing who to go to, how to kind of check that against the policy statement, the policy agenda, and then determine whether or not we want to take an active position on that bill, if we want to pursue any type of modification or edit to that bill. And so he really manages a whole ecosystem of work that is just fast and furious during the legislative session. So is it okay maybe to pose the question to the board if you have any specific questions about anything that was in the policy agenda, how that's organized, any of the specific positions that the city is taking, and then how that relates to the positions we take on bills? Just wanted to give the opportunity to remark on anything that's in front of you.
I guess I'm just curious more on what the interfacing with council looks like. You know, you have certain council members maybe spearheading or co-spearheading different thrusts, maybe some just are providing feedback.
Into the policy statement or into the actual advocacy work?
Both. I'm just curious what that
Yeah.
landscape looks like.
So in terms of the actual policy statement, we get the entire council. In fact, I've all but Mark Wallach have given me tons of comments over the last month and a half to get us to where we're at right now in these revisions. And I'm sure I'll hear from Mark, so I'm not concerned about that. In terms of the actual advocacy work, there certainly are those that are more engaged, interested, and I certainly turn to them. If I know, for example, the Councilmember Schuchard is the safety bicycle champion that he is, and there's a bill on vulnerable road users, I may very well turn to him. Because I know he's gonna have a passion and commitment to go out and testify and attend meetings and what have you. But I will routinely update council on what's going on. I update our 4 council member committee, what's going on. They meet 2 or 3 times during the session. I will give both in-person and electronic updates to our council, because what's really important is council is basically charging me with like, all right, Carl, we told you what we want, but it's obviously hard to read, connect this to bills. So please come back to us and let us know when you connect a policy position to a bill, report back so that we know. And if we disagree, we then say, no, we disagree, that's not the right position. Either bring that back to us at an actual committee meeting or just withdraw the position. So obviously I try to avoid that in the first place by getting a good sense of what council wants. So there's a pretty good communication. And one of the questions I'll ask this council when I meet with them later this month is there anything we can do to improve that communication? Make sure that everybody feels engaged and plugged in.
So, when was the last time you came to us?
September last year.
So what has changed since then? Like what bills passed or what positions we supported? How was this last
Session.
Yeah, the last session, like what,
Yeah,
how effective was it? Like, I would like to know, like, because I feel like I'm getting deja vu with some of these. Like, I feel we've talked about this on bill repayment program before. So, yeah, I just want to know, like, what updates were there?
yeah. Well, the 2 trend, some of the biggest ones were, we got a bill that we've been worked on for years that would make it illegal for adults to drive with a phone in their hand, distracted driving. So that was a Vision Zero bill that we passed. The bill that increases the amount of oil and gas revenues, it's basically the production fee that's going to go for transit. That's huge. It's going to be over 100 million, maybe more like 150 million a year starting next year for transit. The bill that gives, I think it's going to be about $50 million towards front range passenger rail and other statewide strategic transportation projects. That's basically a vehicle rental fee surcharge that's been added. So those are 3 that I can think of. They're not directly related to climate. You know, last year was more of a transportation year than it was like a climate year at the Capitol. And I could certainly, there were more specific ones. They're not. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna offer, Carl puts out kind of a wrap up, a legislative session wrap up of all the bills that we took positions, we meaning the city took positions on, those that passed, organized kind of by sector or area. And I'd be happy to, if you're okay with that, I'd be happy to forward that to the
Yeah,
board.
what I'll do is I'll send that to you.
Okay.
I'll go back to my office right now, and so you'll be able to see exactly which bills we had positions on that passed and which we didn't that brought into the environment. Because there are definitely more than what I just mentioned.
And it's an excellent summary. Tracks it really well, so cool. I think that'd be the thing for you. Great.
Any other follow-up questions, or are we feeling pretty satisfied on this topic?
I guess I have a question. I know, like, I think the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan is gonna start its process in a few weeks, right? So what's the overlap between like this policy positions, the Boulder Valley Plan? I know like there's a climate action plan memo, like, what is the overlap between all this stuff?
It's actually a good question. I've talked to the planning team and the comp plan folks about how we can start aligning the organization of this with the way the comp plan is going to be. And I think Jonathan's going to talk about our SIR framework.
I can't help it. I'm gonna go.
And I think
go
that
whiteboard.
I think that's going to be the organization for the comp plan. Sustainability, equity, and resilience framework.
Just give me a second. I'm gonna forget a layer if you. Strategic. Okay, so just, I thought this might be helpful to show you the layers of how this is organized. And the reason for this is that the city's been going through some reorientation around this. So the Boulder Valley Comp Plan really sets that high level visions, the 20-year plan that sits up here. Again, that's a document that is mostly a land use document, and it requires 4-body review. So that means it's the city council, the Boulder County Board of Commissioners, and then the planning. So our planning board, and then the county's planning board. So the comp plan sits up here, and then underneath that for the city, we have what's called the SARE, or Sustainability, Equity, and Resilience Framework. So that nests underneath the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, though it's really a set of principles and then there are strategies that exist within the SARE framework. What are we trying to accomplish in that area? Underneath that is this new document that was just created this year. This is our citywide or city strategic plan. So this is a 3 to 5 year plan that starts to kind of layer up in to say, in order to achieve what we want here, the actions in the SARE and then the long-term vision of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, here's what needs to happen over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's a very new document, organized by sector. So we have specific things that we're trying to accomplish. The other thing that kind of resides in here is the council priorities. So they have 2-year priorities that creates a rhythm of work there too. And then DSP is just our department strategic plans. That's what we call our master plans. Each department has a set of master plans. Utilities, as an example, has multiple. They have, I think, 15 or even more master plans. And then under department strategic plans, you have kind of department work plans, individual work plans. So hopefully, Aaron, that kind of gives you a sense of how those things layer up to the comp plan. But I think what it suggests is the importance of getting it right here, because ultimately all of this nests and sits underneath it and should kind of represent what the Boulder Valley Comp Plan is intended to do.
Is the climate action plan, is that like different here? Like,
Yeah, so the climate action plan is a little bit different. So we have 2 plans that kind of sit a little bit tangential, right? Up to this point, the climate action plan has almost functioned as a department strategic plan, though it really starts to reference, and this next update will reference a lot of what other departments own in achieving what we're trying to accomplish.
And updating which one, the climate action plan?
The climate action plan,
Okay.
yes. And I say it's one of a couple, so we also have a racial equity plan. The racial equity plan is intended to kind of sit and hover above a lot of this too. So it works to inform how we make decisions in these different areas.
Is it racial equity plan?
Correct.
Okay.
So ultimately, we're trying to think about the climate action plan as something similar to the racial equity plan, which is like, it is the how we do our work, not necessarily exactly the what, because we have a strategic plan as a department. That's our work plan, what we do as a department, and each department should have a work plan that represents the values, goals, and objectives in a climate action plan and a racial equity plan. So we're still trying to work with this whole new, I guess, like I call it, an ecosystem of different plans. But the one thing I say, I call them the department strategic plans because we are trying to move away from the use of master plans. That term, it just has some connotation that we're recognizing now.
So there was like a post online that social media from the Boulder Housing Network that mentioned, do you see it?
Yes.
Also read it?
Yeah.
That mentioned like, the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan didn't have much of a climate action plan, but I wasn't sure how details
Should it be there? Exactly.
should it be there, yeah, like,
Yeah.
that's what I was asking, for this conversation.
Yep.
And so should it be there, or if that not, not is?
Well, no, I think it's a really excellent point because, and I'm happy to forward that article around, but it really referenced the fact that the last update of the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, it signals our intention around climate and really references climate, but it doesn't list the specific strategies. But that's not really what the Boulder Valley Comp Plan is intended to do. It's not a set of strategies necessarily.
Right, it's by nature informed by, but it is not defining.
Correct. So the question then, what should live in the comp plan? And we're using this update as a way to really think differently about the use. How do you think about the comp plan? What does go in there? What shouldn't go in there? What should reside in these other layers to really, these are the actions that support the vision that's represented in the comp plan. It was an interesting article, and I wasn't disagreeing with the assertion that it could be a little bit more specific about how we intend to address climate issues and resilience issues and equity issues, quite frankly. And that's why this update, I think, is really critical because it's a long-term plan.
Yeah.
And bottom line, policy statement will be revised to better align with the comp plan framework, not this year, but next year, probably because the comp plan process is just kicking off, as you know, and how they begin to organize these topics is yet to be determined.
So the Boulder Valley like king basically of this like informs everything else, the comp plan.
It's supposed to connect. You should see the work represented in the comp plan.
Yeah, so if I do an update next year, I think that would be the hope is that there is that alignment. Good question. Our management team would be very impressed when we have this conversation. Thank you.
Apologies that I just went all professorial on you.
Questions.
All right. Are we feeling good, feeling ready to? Okay, well, seeing enough of the questions. Carl, thank you so much.
Thanks for your interest, guys, and thanks for everything you do for us.
I'll take one of those.
Curiosity, I just love it.
Articles and notebook. I don't know.
And please feel free, I know there's a lot to digest here. Tonight was intended to be an update, but also an opportunity and an invitation if there are questions or thoughts that you have about what's written in this document. And love to maybe connect in to say, if you want more frequent updates on kind of the legislative and regulatory actions that are taking place, we can figure out how to do that when the session is, ripping and roaring. So.
Yep.
Carl, thank you.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I think we're ready to move on. And before we do move on, I'm going to, since our dear Rain, Hannah, yes, isn't here at the moment, but as she sent me an email, she's planning on being here in the next 10 or so minutes. If we could just reorder our next items, and if we could do the regional board gathering before we talk about the plant-based thing, just to give them a chance to show up. Right, so.
And if the board would indulge, I just realized I should have done this earlier, but I wanted to invite Jazzy Sakura, who is working with our department, to introduce herself. I'm so glad that you showed up. That's awesome. It's like, what am I doing here?
Like imposter. But yeah, my name is Jazzy Sakura. I'm the Civic Spark / AmeriCorps Fellow with the City of Boulder for 11 months. I'm working with the Nature-Based Climate Solutions team. It's my 3rd week, so I'm still like learning a lot, but I'll be working with the Cool Boulder campaign. So yeah,
Nice to meet you.
yeah, just sitting in.
It's the Cool Boulder campaign.
Yes, we weren't here for that.
Oh, the Cool Boulder campaign.
Oh. Softball across the table. Displaying Jazzy, I love it.
I'm qualified to tell
You-
you what. Okay, well, it's a city-sponsored climate initiative campaign that connects partner organizations. We have like over 40 partner organizations, and we just like connect them and try to get action on the ground through like action alerts, which talk about like volunteer opportunities and events happening in the city through our partner organizations. And we have programs like the Pollinator Advocate Program and Tree Tenders Program, which are through our partners, and so educational stuff like that as well. And so that's kind of a rough overview. There are like 3 main action areas. So the pollinator, what is it called? I was
Pollinator advocates.
Pollinator, yeah, pollinator advocates, and then connected canopies, which is like increasing the urban tree canopy, and then absorbent landscapes, which focuses on soil health. So those are 3 main action areas that we focus around and try to get actions in the community along those lines. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of a basic overview with what I know so far.
That deserves at least one. copy.
Oh,
Well done.
thank you.
Do you have online, like, is there a webpage? or-
Yeah.
It's a beautiful website.
Yeah, coolboulder.org. There's an event calendar, you can sign up for our action alerts, see what's going on in the community once a month.
How's the tree canopy conversation going, like, in terms of like, council aware of the Cool Boulder project? And like, yeah,
Yeah, and so I love the question, and it seems to me that it might be time to have our nature-based solutions team in to talk about the advancement of the work, where we've come. It's the newest area of my department, and it's really exciting to see how that's grown. The Cool Boulder campaign was really built out of this notion that we don't have a sandbox to play in, meaning our department, we don't own land, we don't. So how do we work then with other departments that do open space, parks and recreation? And then in terms of getting the community involved, again, oftentimes the city is not the trusted voice, and we have lots of organizations out there doing amazing work. So it was an intention to bring all of those organizations together, understand what connects them, how we can lean on one another, how we avoid duplicating efforts, create a kind of this really cool platform to work from. And so it was launched about 2 years ago, and it's been really, really effective. And it really is kind of the cornerstone of that body of work, our nature-based solutions team. To your question about the tree canopy work, there's a lot involved in that question. And again, another opportunity for us to give you an update, have Brett back to talk about some of that, but.
it's still leading that effort.
Correct.
Okay.
But again, when we talk about tree canopy, there are a lot of pieces to it. There's data collection. We've now done that mapping. If you remember, Brett did showcase kind of looking at our heat mapping, how that heat mapping evolved into how do we think about our tree canopy all the way down to the parcel level. If you look at interventions to say if you plant, because it's not planting trees, it's growing trees. You can plant a bunch of trees, but we need mature canopy, which means we need to think about how do we maintain them in a world where we have a warming climate. It means that you have to water them more. Where is it the best site for certain trees? How do you pair that with kind of the technology solutions? So as we think about looking at heat in vulnerable neighborhoods and populations, do we want to think about air conditioning? Do we want to think about tree canopy, some combination of both? How does it work then with our forestry department in terms of public trees versus private trees? What is the policy? Do we want to look at our landscaping code to include an element which is some kind of prohibition or regulation around trees on private property? Valuing trees in a different way is an example. So a lot of our work right now is with our forestry department, which sits in our parks and recreation department. But to answer your question, you said, is it going well? It's going really well because we're building this collective literacy across all of the departments to understand the value that our tree canopy plays, but also thinking about it in context of if we're planting trees, what does that mean for increased water use? What does it mean for kind of maintaining the differential of heat? How do we think about it in the WUI? Are we introducing more fuels for wildfire? So having some of those very interesting conversations has been really, really great. That's what we aim to do.
It would be nice to have an update. I recently read a paper and I cannot believe that I didn't save it. Because I've been looking for it for the last 10 minutes, but I cannot find it anymore. It was like about like using reflective white paint on roofs, for example.
Mhm.
And that helps a lot, you know, like if especially in areas that don't have a canopy yet, or you know, the trees are growing, using like reflective white paint on the roofs
Right.
helps a lot. And yeah, so I would like to know, you know, like what stuff they're looking at beyond canopies. I think it's great, but it's like a 10-year investment probably too.
Except that, you know, as we think about our natural systems, there are other ways to kind of get to that heat management, which means shrubs. Thinking about how we're rehydrating. That's why the soils piece is so important too. How we are, I mean, the reality is carbon follows water. So as we think about the water cycle and how water exists in our system now, how we are protecting that. And when I use that term rehydrating soils, really thinking about it from the term of can we grow more shrubs and looking at some of those kind of opportunities to kind of move away from rockscaping, move away from, because I think the general theory is, oh, well, let's take out non-functional turf and put in like pea gravel.
Mhm.
Well, from a heat management perspective, that's not that, I'm sorry, we're totally off topic.
This is
I'm looking at
fascinating.
you and
This is,
I'm waiting for the stink eye.
As long as it stays interesting, you're good.
So part of what we're doing now is thinking about the landscape code as an opportunity to look at how do we address the climate and resilience dimensions of how we think about landscape. So yeah, when I say we put in pea gravel, that's like xeriscaping, but the problem is that just increases heat.
Okay, so you have to change the paradigm a little bit. like-
Exactly.
Okay, yeah.
The other thing it does, what we realized in some pilots that we've done in Boulder Valley School District is when you do a lot of rockscaping, you end up with weeds where you don't want weeds. And then you have operations spraying more pesticides and herbicides to address the weeds. Counterintuitive, counterproductive, like that is not what we want. So how do we think about what is the new paradigm, Hernan? What do we want to see? And then how do we use our landscape code to address water issues, wildfire issues, climate and resilience issues? And there are some solutions there that are
Interesting. I thought about the rockscaping.
Yeah.
Like it's good for water conservation,
Sure.
but it has a little.
Yeah, but you ask a gardener, like you ask anyone that owns a house and has put in pea gravel, they'll tell you, right? There will be weeds the next year and they're hard to get out,
They are.
very hard to get out. So, yeah, I would love to see what the landscape code looks like.
That is an item for later on your agenda. We're not going to cover it, but if you'll note on the very back page, as we do that council look ahead, there is a big discussion taking place about the landscape code and what it means to open up that code and what is policy and what's in the code. So as we think about, council has a strong desire to look at using the landscape code to really connect in with the state statute around removal of non-functional turf. It's an opportunity then to kind of align around this idea of how do we think about the code in terms of water and wildfire. Is it just ripping out junipers? What do you want to replace it with? What do we want to require with new development? So it's a really great opportunity, and it's a very powerful code that we don't normally think about. It's like, oh, landscaping, yeah, but it actually is quite a powerful code. So that is an item that I'd like to bring back to the board to discuss as we understand what it's going to look like in opening that up. You notice it was originally scheduled for December. There had to be a shift in that, which actually I find good because it gives me an opportunity to bring something to the board.
Cool. Yeah, I look forward to hearing about that.
Sorry.
You are all good. It was very interesting. But board, do we have updates on
Yes.
the regional board meeting?
Aaron, do you want me to kick this off and then you're gonna correct everything that I say that's wrong? In our last meeting, you might recall, I talked just a little bit about, and you've heard an update a few times from Hernan and both myself about this multi-board kind of, I don't know what we want to call it, a collaboration, giant board. So bringing all of the jurisdictions or a number of jurisdictions in the Front Range together that have environmental type boards, remembering that they differ a little bit. Some are appointed by council, some are just volunteers. They differ, and that's okay. And there have been two meetings. You might recall the first meeting Hernan and I both went to. It was in Westminster, hosted by the city of Westminster, and then the second was hosted by Broomfield. And at our last, hi Hannah.
Hello, welcome.
At our last meeting, I think I reported that there was a request that Boulder host the next meeting. And I really want to appreciate Hernan and kind of his thinking around how do we design an agenda that is meaningful, and how do we design an agenda that doesn't result in just like the sharing out of like, Westminster, what are you doing? And Brookville, what are you doing? And that's nice. We'll see you in 3 months and do it again. And so really wanted to appreciate Hernan, if you recall, He worked very hard to put out a survey to all of the boards to say, what are the kind of topics? What do you want this thing to look like? And in the topics, there was an opportunity to hear from all of the members, like what are the big things that we need to be thinking about together for transformational action? And one of them, of course, is water resilience. And I think it's a great one to think about because there's a lot of dimensions to that. And so I think tonight, and unless Hernan has a different opinion or approach, I think what I wanted to just share out is the plan is to host the next meeting, I believe the second week in November. In some conversations that we have had, kind of come to the idea that we would have a speaker who's kind of the subject matter expert on water resilience from the state. We actually have someone who is the section chief for water supply planning for the state of Colorado. He actually used to work for the city. His name is Russ Sands, and he's a great thought leader. To have him talk about what's going on at the state level, and he can speak intelligently to, what's happening on, on the western slope with regard to Colorado River. How do we think about policy? How do we think, not just today, but forecasting, and how does climate and resilience kind of play into this conversation with respect to water? And then what I thought would be useful then is to have a second speaker from our water utilities department who's been doing some really pioneering work on how do we model differently around if you start to think about climate in different ways, forecasting forward, what does that mean in terms of water supply and the policies and the plans that we have now in terms of water efficiency, our drought management. So using that data to really forecast and make different policy decisions.
When you say water efficiency, are you talking about water use efficiency or literally the efficiency of the water plant?
I'm talking about the water efficiency plan that the city has really specifies how we think about water use in the community. So because we own and operate the water utility, the stormwater utility and the wastewater utility, it really is that idea about do we want to think about policy that would require limitations on water use? Non-watering days. So it's water efficiency community-wide. Yeah, great question. So Hernan, I want to give you an opportunity to talk, but I think what I wanted to share with all of you and put on your mental radar is that we will host that meeting, and I'm hoping that all of you can attend. Would love to, if you all, in my opinion, would be the host versus the city necessarily being the host. And so love to think about how we can support you all in preparing for that meeting. My guess is we'll probably have 30 to 40 people.
I will hope so. Yeah, that will be a good size.
Yeah.
And what did you say was the planned date?
We don't have a planned date right now. I believe it's tentatively scheduled for around the second week in November.
I will say we can choose now. I mean, we can aim for the maybe Thursday 14th.
Is it like an all day thing or is it
No, it will be like at 6.
in the evening?
Yeah, like just like our meetings right now, so 6 to 8. Most likely we'll have 2 speakers in the first, hour and 20 minutes. And then we were thinking of doing like a socialization part, like a speed dating where we can like go around and everybody can introduce to each other and exchange cards and see what exchange what they're working on. And just try to find some synergy between the different people, the volunteers. Hopefully some staff comes as well for the first meeting and the second meeting as well. There were some staff from the cities. I think this is all they're hosting. I'm guessing there will be more interest, to be honest. So hopefully we have like a nice group.
Yeah, I have no strong preference for
Not the.
day. I'm gonna
14th.
have to be
No, the
calling
15th.
out of work anyways.
Can I throw out the 12th as an option,
Yeah, well, we can do that.
if that works for
I'll
others?
do that, save the dates.
Can we do a 13th instead of the 12th?
You should not plan around my schedule. I could not make it the 13th or 14th, but I will happy to help support, get ready if.
Well, then, if the 12th works for everyone, we can.
12 works just as early for me as any other day, so
How
You can
early
do
does
that
it?
for the 13th?
I can attend any day. I'll just need to leave and go to work after being there for a brief amount of time.
What then do you have to go to work?
Every day, usually at like 3 p.m. but I can be like,
Oh, well, it'll be in the afternoon though, since it's a weekday, it'll be after work.
She
I
works
I
in
work evenings. I work from like late afternoon to midnight.
Okay.
So my schedule is irrelevant. I can make it. I will just not be able to stay for long and have to go to work.
Okay.
Any day will work just as poorly as any other.
Wednesdays work, I don't like,
Wednesdays work just as poorly as any other.
okay, let's do Tuesday the 12th then. Is that okay with?
I am not gonna plan around my schedule. I'm gonna see how I'm doing.
You might have another thing going on.
I ideally would be able to come, but
Let's see.
I don't think I'm gonna commit to anything early November.
Just one additional thing to flag, Monday, November 11th is Veterans Day. So I'm not sure if long weekend would impact attendance, but just wanted to highlight that.
How is that? Is that a government, are schools closed on the 11th or?
I would assume so.
I believe so.
Yeah.
ISD closes for bank holidays.
I don't think there's any magic with the date,
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Generally targeted mid-November-ish. So if we need to look to the next
Tuesday,
week,
Tuesday the 12th sounds like a great target and we can finalize it later.
it also gives us the ability to go seek the location. We can host it.
Okay, let's shoot for Tuesday the 12th. I'll send say the dates either Friday or Monday, so people just are aware.
Yeah, otherwise I'll forget it. Maybe we can look at Junkyard Social Club or something.
Jonathan, would you send me, I took some notes of what you just said, but could you also send me some write-up of the speaker and the water utility city person as well, just so I can introduce them and and save the date and get people excited.
For sure.
Okay, I think that's about it for that.
I'll just throw out, Hernan, if you need help with any event planning, I'm happy to help with just whatever, logistics and things like that. I've done a lot of events.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. But yeah, I think that's it for now. Picking the date, speakers. And now the next thing would just be to save the dates, and yeah, from that we can choose the room or way to do it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you guys.
And with that, we can. Heather, Jesus, Hannah, welcome. My brain is dysfunctional this time of day. And we can jump into the hopefully final, let's try and get this across the finish line, the plant-based challenge. I ordered things around so you could be here for this, so welcome. Let's do it. Jonathan?
Sure, Hannah, do you want me to kick it off? Whatever's easiest.
Yeah, I think that would be great. So I make
Okay.
sure I'm on the same page as you.
Okay. Hopefully you all saw the note from last week, and I just wanted to put a little context to the shift in the plan. And I apologize because I know the board talked about this at your last meeting. We had a pretty solid plan, and then I kind of upended that. But I wanted to explain. The reason for that is I started thinking a bit about the function that we are asking boards to take, and realizing that really is an administrative function. It's not a policy necessarily. And it just got me a little squeamish that I wanted to just check in with our city manager and city attorney to make sure that they were comfortable. And in fact, I know that there's been some, I don't want to elevate to the level of concern, but just that other boards have thought about bringing things to council and just trying to manage those expectations about what boards should do, what they can do, how does council react to that. And I don't want the EAB to be put in a position of like, why are they coming to us? And so I just wanted to check in with that. And as a result, I actually think we found a better pathway. Because again, I think it was my guidance to say it might be good to go and talk to council and just let them know that you're going to go to the boards. And
So you guys didn't do that?
We did not.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And so that was a note I put out last week, and after consulting with Hannah, we agreed that that we still wanted to move forward, and Hannah had offered, and the board supported the idea of her reaching out to individual council members. So that's still part of the plan. What changed was the ability to actually draft up something that could be sent by you all to the other boards, but also supported by Nuria, because she kind of oversees the administrative function of the boards. It feels like a more positive thing to come from her to say, going to encourage board liaisons and kind of the administration of boards to kind of move in this direction. So felt like it had a little bit more horsepower in that regard. And then the second piece that I wanted to just offer up, and not sure how you all want to address this, is just what kind of resources you'd like to provide to other boards. Is it some packet or some materials? Hannah had some really great ideas in some of the research that she has done that we could then provide from the EAB to other boards and other board liaisons to say, here are some talking points, why this is important. And my department can support that with respect if we want to do any like some layout or some working with some kind of graphics designer to put something nice together. If you just want it to be a letter, whatever you all want is totally fine, and know we're here to support. Hannah, what did I miss? I'm sure a lot.
No, I think that's great. I'm really excited to have Nuria support. I wanted to check just, is it okay with her if we send the invitation still and either include a line of her support or include her in the email? Okay, great.
Yes.
Who's that?
Nuria?
Yeah.
Our city manager.
And on your last point, I did create another document. I'm going to pare down the number of documents that we actually use, but that's like a how to implement it. That's more focused on the staff liaisons, the admin part of it, so that there's the like kind of the why and the pitch with the board, and then there's the like how. So I can send that to you all for feedback if you want, but I feel ready to start reaching out. Graphic designs are great. I'm more of a lean, like, let's just start getting some emails out instead of make something too pretty. And then if we get good feedback or we learn we need to add stuff, like it'd be great maybe once it's finalized and we know that it is effective to have something more permanent that the city could share or something. But I don't know, personally, I think a Word doc is okay for now.
Yeah, and also once we send it out, that doesn't have to be the final version of the thing, right? We can send it out and then still make additional edits. So like, I think it would be great to just get it across the finish line, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Terrifying words, I know, but we can get it across, get it out to other boards, and then if it needs attunement, as Hannah said, if we get feedback or whatever, if we're looking at it, it's like, maybe if we reworded this or redid this, I think that we've reached a hopefully acceptable final form for this to go out. And doing it as a more administrative thing does not prohibit council from making it policy. It just changes the pathway in which that happens, right? So, because this is also going to council, you're talking to council members. I know at least the mayor has already gotten outreach from me. I don't know how many other people you've reached out to, but they're all going to be aware of it. It's going out to all of the boards. And so it's not going to just like disappear. It's still going to be around, still going to be present. And so if there is going to be further steps to take with that, that can happen. But getting sort of the basic foundation across, I think, is the most important step at this point.
Hannah, are you open to sending out PDFs rather than Word documents? I just know the PC versus Mac scramble is real.
Right. Yes, I will make them all PDFs. Great. For you guys, it's Word, so you can add comments, but for finalized stuff, I'll do PDF.
So the next step is to send this letter to the other boards.
So yes, so it's going to be an email with information and any additional attachments that, and Hannah's going to be taking point on this. It has been her project from start to finish, and I don't want to take that away from her. So, but just like an email with information and any attached materials that Hannah feels is appropriate.
And what does the final version say now? I haven't looked at the document since I think the last meeting. Did much change?
I have not changed it at all. I probably will. I'm gonna add a line about Nuria's support with, once I get that confirmed. And then I'll just read through it again to maybe simplify it, probably is what it needs. It's my guess, but it's, so right now it's exactly what you guys saw. And it's all in one folder that I think I can resend again. You should have access to everything in the Google Drive folder that I made. And also, just as a random note, so you all know, there's a whole coalition of folks from around the world, really, that are working on plant-based default advocacy. Not some cities, but a lot of like nonprofits and people within companies and stuff. So I do have these great resources of other people and their best practices and kind of sharing learnings together, which is kind of fun. So I'll be sure to incorporate anything that I learned from other people.
And in the letter right now, it reads as a suggestion, right? More of a suggestion, like, hey, we're doing
An
this.
invitation.
Yeah. Invitation, I think is a good word. It's this, yeah, invitation or challenge or one of those. This is what we're doing. We would love it if you could join us. Go be more environmentally conscious. Have fun. Right, definitely not a like mandate, not a demand, not a, you know, hold for ransom, whatever. It's much more voluntary, and I think it could be quite fun if we make this like an annual thing. We have our annual EAB board challenge, like challenge the other boards to make one small change to make themselves more environmentally conscious. And so a great start to that if we want to continue.
I like that.
I thought it was a fun idea. Yeah. So do we have more questions, more feedback, more conversation that needs to be done, or are we feeling pretty happy with what we've got on the table right now?
My only question will be if you need more feedback on the documents, or just from the late, like the edits from last month, they feel complete.
Yeah, I feel pretty complete.
Oh.
I mean, obviously anyone's welcome to, but yeah, like I said, they haven't really changed since you looked at them last.
I have one question that I don't think we've talked about. And this is not a requirement, again, because this is not, we're not putting this out there as any sort of necessity. It's more of an invitation, like you said, but it would be cool on our side to track who actually implements it.
Yeah.
Is there a way to get that information other than just people who
Shame
decide
this.
to email back saying like, great, we're gonna give this a go? Is that like something that the staff liaisons can communicate of just yes or no, our board decided to do this?
I was planning on like, for sure following up
Okay,
and
Yeah.
making sure we know. Like I have a spreadsheet and I'll track it and you guys all have access to it, and just put any comments. And I also said I just make myself available like for staff. I made a document, but if they'd rather like meet in person and talk about it. Clearly I have too much time on my hands right now, but
I love it. This is awesome.
I'm
It's-
like
it's impressive.
very into this. And
Impressive.
so anyway, I have this time and space, and this is what I'd like to do with it. So yeah. Happy
Also,
to,
all
like,
board meetings are public record. So if they talk about it, it will be hopefully on the record. Something, sunshine laws, but so I don't know, trawling through board meetings is what people want to be doing with their free time.
that I will not do.
No, but you know, so yeah.
But I will follow up with people and track it, because otherwise it's, and I mean, part of it is making sure they implement it correctly, or else we don't reduce any emissions and we don't have the benefits we're looking for. So just making sure that they know how to implement it and check in, even if they say yes, you know, let's check it in 6 months or something and just see if it's still a thing.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. Okay. And any further
So Jonathan,
follow-up?
maybe the last thing is I'll just connect with you for that, how to include Nuria in and then I think we'll be good to go.
Wonderful. So hopefully this this will be our last.
I have a question, so like, if Heather opens a group order, should she put in the email, please order vegetarian? Preferably.
Great question. I've included that in my implementation document. My thought, and this is the one document I would share with you, so was just to include a sentence that was something like, "You're welcome to order anything you want. As a reminder, our board is practicing a plant-based by default approach for food ordering to reduce greenhouse gas emissions." But like,
Something in the
still keep it
paper,
like, and you can order anything you want.
yeah, there was something in the paper that you shared, the menus that had like a disclaimer, or I guess, I don't know if it will be called disclaimer, like something about the effects of meat. They did have more people choosing the vegetarian. I can't remember like which studies did that, but it was there. So I think maybe like, yeah, like if I had included that in the emails, something like that, it will be good. And I mean, and the other staff liaisons as well. But it seemed like that was effective to a certain degree.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of research that basically don't call things vegan or plant-based, like that's not effective. But if you're like your healthy heart option or your healthy planet, those kind of things are effective.
That's really good to be associated with being vegan. Have you met vegans on Facebook? Anyways.
I don't know, hope try and do that.
That's terrifying. I don't recommend that. Okay, so feeling okay? Feeling okay?
Great.
Great. Hopefully this will be our last procedural meeting on this topic. Next month, I hope to hear an all good, things are happening kind of update. But it has been a long process, and I think for myself at least, I'm pretty pleased with where we got to, and I hope that is true for everyone else.
Thank you, Hannah, for all your hard
Yes,
work.
thank you. It has
Yeah,
been an
thanks for everyone.
impressive effort from you from start to finish, and I think it is going to turn out incredibly.
Well, thanks for everyone's support.
Yeah. Okay, so with that, unless anyone else wants to bring anything forward that is not on our agenda, I think we can jump into the council calendar preview. From Mr. Cutman.
Thank you, Chair Brockett. So I can rattle through this pretty quickly. What I will say as a preface is we have a lot that is on deck to come to the board, so be prepared. If you look at that back page, you'll notice last time we talked a bit about the things that, at least in my mind, that I really want to make sure that have your input. One I already talked about, so about the fifth or so bullet down, you can see the landscape updates, wildfire hardening piece. Again, that's not going to happen in December. Probably it's going to be Q1. That's my hope, which actually gives us, like I said, 20 minutes ago or so, an opportunity to really refine what it is we are looking for from you in terms of input on how do we use that code, what kind of things should we be considering in that update, but we're not quite there yet, so that's good. You'll see the climate action plan update. We have an update to council on December 19th. I plan to bring back, last time I gave you a high level of what is in scope in the charter of what we are actually doing with that update. We have a really great document working now around what we're actually updating. And then the things that I really want to bring to the board's attention are the additional goals that we are adding in with relation to climate justice and resilience. So trying to build those into kind of that suite of goals that we have around emissions, 100% renewable electricity, net zero, starting to fill that out a little bit and codify that. So I'd like to bring those to you for some discussion. And then
Is the climate action plan, is that gonna be like, I think if I Google that, there's like a memo to council.
right, that's why we're updating, because that's ridiculous to send people to council memo.
So it's gonna be like the Boulder Valley plan is a nice PDF with graphics, or not to that level?
Yeah, it is. And we spent a lot of time with the last version was our climate commitment. And that was a really snazzy document, lots of photos, graphically appealing. But what I have told my team is I don't want to spend a bunch of our staff time trying to make a perfect document. So what should it look like? Should it be web-based and in a PDF version? And then we had accessibility issues that we need to make sure that we're following in terms of PDFs. So then is there a web-based version that kind of mimics our story map that we do around our impact report? Do we want something that people can print out and get a high-level summary of, here's what we're trying to accomplish by when, here are the different strategies that are going to help us get there, and some of those actions and then links. So we're still working on that format, but there will be something that's a lot more user-friendly than the memo. Then the last thing that I'll bring forward is that in that update is we've done some really interesting mapping across the city organization. I think I shared this last time, which is council was very interested in adding things like land use, more detail on land use, water, transportation, the economy, and how does that relate? And then how do we identify the work that's going on across the organization? So as an example, to your comment earlier about efficiency, we have a drought plan, we have an efficiency plan, we have a stormwater management plan, we have a grasslands plan, we have a parks and rec plan, we have a facilities master plan. And every one of those plans, as they get updated, represent and signal how it is orienting around climate and resilience. That's where it should live. And so what we're trying to do in the mapping is to start to identify where are those different plans. And then as we talk about, say, water in the update, why does water matter? Why do we think about water in the context of climate? What is the city doing across the organization, and where do those policies and strategies live? So then someone can say, oh, well, water, okay, so lives over in Parks and Rec and in open space and facilities and in our utilities. And so that's how we're kind of trying to create that kind of new structure. So I just gave you way too much. But that's what I want to bring to you for your input relatively soon before we go to council. Then also, if you look down, I've also signaled to our colleagues for the Vision Zero action plan. I feel like that's something that you all should be weighing in on in terms of kind of mobility, transportation, and kind of the climate impact and environmental impact more broadly around some of our Vision Zero work in transportation planning. And then the other one that I'd like to make sure comes to you is the ADU update and kind of the occupancy discussion. There's a lot of implications there. I think you all would be interested in and provide good feedback. So
Is the email I sent you about parking requirements, has
the amps.
discussion happened yet, or?
No, it has not. So that's the other one. That's cute. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, that's the amps.
So
Oh, that's the AMPS update.
what is
Yeah.
AMPS?
So you think that's-
stand for?
Resilient fossil free buildings.
Oh, yes, right. And then what we're going to be bringing forward, sorry, I had that on my list, but it's on the other side. You recall a few months ago, we had staff that were presenting like the initial framework of our healthy fossil fuel buildings roadmap. We're bringing that back to you. It has a whole lot more structure, and we said we'd be bringing it back for a check-in and more guidance from you all. So that's another one.
Great.
Update landscape code. Yes.
Okay.
So just to orient myself, AMPS is what? AMPS is for
Access, it's,
Accessibility, mobility, and parking.
thank you.
okay. And then
It's like I'm gonna get it wrong.
when it comes to the council items, SS is study session, right? What is PHCTO MCM?
Where do you see that?
In the back, where it says,
In the parentheses where it also talks about the time
Yeah.
estimate for.
so climate action plan update, December 19th, MCM 45 minutes.
Oh, matters from city manager. So
Oh, okay.
what that signals is it going to be a study session? Is it an agenda item? Is it an ordinance? And that one is going to be under matters from the city manager. So it's at the end of the agenda. So it'll be the consent agenda, the public hearings, and then we'll do that update then.
So it's not necessarily like an ordinance here or something like that. It's just-
No, I mean, it'll be at a regular business meeting, but the way it's coded matters. So if it's a public hearing, that means that there is an ordinance typically associated with that. So there is like, you're getting comments, council is getting comments. This is an update to council on where we are in the update, doing a check-in with them on here is how we're thinking about this update. Here's what we've done so far. So it's really just an update to council on a check-in with them, in which case it can just be under matters from the city manager. Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for asking that.
And CTO, while we're at it. The second top, election certification, CTO 15 minutes. Second item, second bullet point.
Yeah, I'm looking at that. Let me see. The first one's public hearing. CTO is clerk. No, what is that? I'm looking at you, Heather, to bail me out. I'm phoning a friend. CTO, that's an election certification, so that's
CTO.
Chief Technology Officer.
let's call it that.
Something about
But the rest
I know, that's what I know.
Public
Chief
hearing,
Technology
study
Officer.
session, that
It's
is,
not Chief Technology Officer.
no, but that's not what it is. Clerk.
I'm trying to go from clerk and be like, what makes sense?
I know.
TO after clerk, I not getting anything.
Transaction.
Yeah.
It's the election certification, so
So it's something from the city clerk's office.
it's gotta be, yeah.
It's more relevant
I
for
know
like
you'll email us when
scheduling
you
and
figure it out.
organization of meeting order, I think.
It's gonna gnaw at me the rest of the night. Thank you so much.
Well, enjoy your sleeplessness as caused by the EAB. All right, does anyone else have anything on the upcoming council items that they want to see, talk more about? No, all right. Let's take a brief check-in about our next meeting. Currently scheduled for November the 6th. Unless there are any overlapping holidays, there are none that I'm aware of, but Heather, you're more aware of calendar things than I am.
I'll just confirm. Quick, I don't believe there are. Nope.
Okay, so unless there are any board member movement proposals, then I think we're good to have our next meeting on the 6th, yeah?
I'm unlikely to be there, but
Okay.
it works.
Oh, come on.
But it's not like there's a better day. It's
There is
just that
probably no
sort of-
better day.
Yeah. More the general frame of time.
Yeah, keep us updated.
Well,
Seems optimistic to
I will
attend virtually,
hope
but
to see
maybe.
you there and will understand if you're not.
Really quickly, since we're on this
Yes,
topic,
go ahead.
just flagging, I know this is far out, but the January meeting would typically fall on what is New Year's Day.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
we
we're
may want to discuss moving it to the 8th.
cool. Yeah, unless anyone has any immediate concerns with that, I think we can tentatively bump it out a week and check in on our December meeting
That works.
for more to the date confirmation. Great. Thank you, Heather, for bringing that up.
And then if I want to dial in to the next meeting,
Yes.
do I need to let you know? Or do I just?
No, I send the Zoom invite for panelists to everyone, just, I know things come up last minute too, so everybody has that option.
I'm pretty sure of that then.
It's in the hour before email that goes out.
Yeah.
The only thing to note is just food orders,
Yeah.
so I can adjust quantities. So, yeah, just let me know.
I'll let you know.
Cool. So unless there's anything else, seeing nothing, I think I will adjourn I will set a motion to adjourn today's meeting.
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Bye.
That appears to be unanimous. With that, thank you everyone for joining us. That will conclude our meeting.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Hannah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.